Voices International, Freedom in Africa.
Of Uganda, my ruling party decided to put Karamoja as a region of its own. So when I say I'm the aspiring national candidate for vice chairman, Northern Uganda, that's what I am meaning. Beyond that, I am a Pan-Africanist, an acid-tested and award-winning Pan-Africanist. Recently, I led the front line of media war in the battle, in the Pan-African battle in Ethiopia, fighting alongside our Ethio-Americans and the people from October Africa. When recently Ethiopia was under attack by the imperialists, led by the United States of America. My lecture today is about transforming the global anatomy. Transformation of the global anatomy. That is what I'm going to discuss today. And I want to discuss this lecture, the particularity, I want to lecture this topic with specificity in terms of what I want our people in the global anatomy to know. So when we're talking about global anatomy, we shall study the globe from here, our continent, Africa. And that's where much of my interest will be. However, I will broaden my discussion to include the entire world. Just before I start, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to the administration of this African Voices International, and particularly my brother from the Ghanaian mother, Isaac Isaac Boado from Accra, Ghana, and the other leaders of African Voices International. We so much value you, we love you so much, and we deeply respect you, and we deeply appreciate your role in transforming the global anatomy. And therefore, having said that, I would like to begin my lecture. Freedom legend, freedom giants in the various parts of the world. When we are talking about transforming global anatomy, we must be deliberate, we must be purposeful, we must be clear in terms of what we want to be transformed. So the transformation must be directional. It should not be without direction. And that we should converge our different ideas, amalgamate, add them together, sum them together to see how these ideas can be used to transform the global anatomy. Now, in the lecture of today, I want to begin with the issue of social security. How is global anatomy faring in the issue of social security? Now, it will take me to define what social security is and throw more light and then go into the depth of it, how I want it to be transformed. Social security simply means creating a welfare kind of funds to cater for people who are no longer working, or people who are working, but they are suffering from social related issues. No, in society is nothing but human organization. If you find the goats together, don't say those are a society of goats. If you find the cows and the bulls together, don't call them a society of cattle. In fact, they call them herds of cattle. But for human, we call them society. It's particularly for human. So you can realize that even as people work today in the world of technology, as people work, as people leave work, as people retire, nothing much is left of help for these people. Social security, securing the welfare of our people who are in working age group, the welfare of our people who are now past the working age group, who are retired, it's becoming a big issue in a global anatomy. Actually, today, I want to emphasize that freedom giants, wherever you are, begin to talk about the issue of social security in your various countries. And my brother Isaac begin to talk about social security in Ghana. My brother said something from Lesotho, my brother from Lesotho, who is an aspirant to become the prime minister, begin to talk about social security there. Now, I want to give you a figure, the facts. Social security is doing badly in Africa. We are badly off in terms of social security. In fact, less than 8%, in fact, less than 10% of African population is covered with social security. Meaning that 90% of Africans in working age group are not saving at all for the after work life they are going to live. People are not saving for the retirement. And with the inflation that catches up in our world, with the challenges we have, with the responsibilities people have, saving is literally becoming a very big issue in the global anatomy, particularly here in Africa. Now we have less than 10%, in fact we have less than 10% of African working age group that is being covered by social security. The figure is somehow fair in North Africa. That is 19.9% of the working age group of people in North Africa have social security coverage. In sub-Saharan Africa, the figure is very threatening. It's only 6.3% of the working age group of people in sub-Saharan Africa that are covered with social security. And I will explain deeply the importance of social security fund, having such pools like social security fund, how important it is to the national security of the people, to the economy, and then the security of the country. I will go into the depth of that. At this point, I will move global. I will reach to the other parts of the world. At the moment, I'm still in Africa. Now, in Africa here, one of the best countries that is having a good social security coverage and therefore better value is in Namibia, in Southern Africa. Namibia is a country with a GDP of about $5,000. Not the actual GDP, per capita income, please, I beg your pardon. Namibia is a country with a per capita income of about $5,000, and in Namibia, and a population of about 3,000 people there. If it has exceeded that, I think it's now nearing to 4,000. Namibia's social security fund is valued at 11.8 billion US dollar. 11.8 billion US dollar translates to 103% of the GDP of Namibia. So you can now determine the GDP of Namibia. So Namibia's social security fund is 103% of the GDP of Namibia. In my country, Uganda, ours is valued at 5.3 billion US dollar, which is actually 18 trillion in Ugandan city. 5.3 billion Ugandan US dollar is the value of our social security fund, or NSSF, National Social Security Fund. And in the region, that's in the region here, East Africa, Uganda is said to be doing well in terms of social security. But I can assure you, given the figure I have given you, Uganda, with a population of about 50 million, is actually doing badly in terms of social security than in Namibia, with a population of about 4 million people, having a much bigger and better value of their social security than my country, Uganda. So, in Nigeria, it is about 36.8 billion, which is about 6.3% of the GDP of Nigeria. You can imagine the most populous country in Africa having a social security fund, which is just 6.3% of the GDP of Nigeria. So, given this figure, even when we go further, 80% of African women, pregnant women, do not have any maternity insurance. They don't have any maternity benefit. And if they deliver, they get any benefit whatsoever. It is only Ghana and Rwanda that have started a mandatory maternity contributory fund scheme, insurance scheme. You can imagine 80% of African women, that give back are not protected at all. They don't have any insurance, so no security at all for this majority of African lady who give back, African mother who give back. So I therefore want to delve into the importance of social security to the people in a country, to the economy, and then to a security per se. Now, if you go to Japan, Japan is having a social security fund valued at 1.7 trillion US dollar. Now, that critical pool of money, which is raised locally in Japan, is the very fund that is being used to transform the economy. Toyota, a company that makes very many vehicles, that manufactures very many vehicles, is actually being funded by Social Security Fund of Japan. Now, if you go to Asian Tiger, the Taiwan, the Singapore, the South Korea, the Malaysia, these Asian Tiger have their Social Security Fund to GDP ratio. If their Social Security Fund is at least 30% of the GDP of those countries. Now, once there is a pool of local money raised like that, then that creates for a country economic independence. And I can tell you, without economic independence, a country will remain a sub-colony of Western imperialists. A country will always remain begging, even for the project that could be done with little money. So, Social Security Fund is important to create, to boost the economy, to create more jobs in the economy that will translate into raising more funds to sustain this Social Security Fund. And again, once the critical money raised in an economy, now that money will guarantee a country's social security. Now countries will now not need to go and borrow from World Bank, from IMF, Export-Import Bank of China, and what have you, to fund the major projects in the country. To define Nigeria we want to construct a refinery that will then be funded by Social Security Fund of Nigeria, and the government of Nigeria pays back Social Security Fund of Nigeria. That would literally mean that the currencies we have, our local currencies will reduce in terms of competition with the dollar, because we use the dollar to pay back the money we borrow from this World Bank, IMF, Import-Export Bank of China. Therefore, our local currency would appreciate in value. So they will compete favorably well with the dollar. Now, economic independence is still something that is elusive to majority of countries in Africa. It was only Libya that had gained economic independence. Gaddafi left when Libya was demanded zero ceiling by any foreign country. It was actually Libya that was even lending money to other countries, including those in Europe. So therefore, in a transformation of global anatomy, freedom giants, freedom legends, and anyone concerned, patriots of the various countries, Pan-Africanists, must begin to talk about the issue of Social Security Fund. We must expand Social Security coverage to cover everybody who is in working age group, whether in formal sector or informal sector. What is very, very fundamental here is to have everybody covered with Social Security, and in the evening of the life of that person, then he or she will have a stream flow of income and will be able to sustain or live a better life. And I can tell you, in my country, Uganda, government came up with a social grant facility for aged people. People who are Ugandans who are 80 years and above are being paid some small money, which is the 25,000 Ugandan cedi. 25,000 Ugandan cedi, if you can convert it to dollar, $1 is equivalent to about 3,650 Ugandan cedi. So you can convert that into dollar. $1 equals to 3,650 cedi, Ugandan cedi. So now even paying that money is becoming very difficult for government. Now imagine in our various countries where we have people who are aging now. If we don't work hard now to make sure until these people saved are covered by social security, there will come a time when sustaining life of aged people, retired people who are not earning income will become an economic threat in Africa. Imagine Uganda having a population of, say, like 5 million people who are retired without any stream flow of income. How much money would the government need to mobilize to pay them, at least to sustain their life? How will these people be able to really sustain themselves in terms of treatment and what have you? So therefore, the emphasis I want to put in to every freedom giant is that after this lecture, go back and inquire about social security fund in your country. How good is it? How well is it covering the people in your country? I insist we must move social security coverage to at least 98% of the working age group of Africa. Just like it is in this foreign country, where social security is very, very good. Norway, for example, has turned its social security fund into sovereign wealth creation fund, which is actually anchoring the economy of Norway. Therefore, social security is an important issue in this lecture I want to give. And all freedom legends, all citizens of the various countries in Africa must begin to engage, must begin to brainstorm, must begin to converse, must begin to put government under pressure to expand social security coverage to literally cover everybody in the working age group in both formal and informal sector. The second issue I want to really discuss at this very important lecture is the issue of political corruption in our country. Immediately we gained independence, thanks to Kwame Nkrumah, thanks to Haile Selassie, our forefathers who fought for our political independence. Now, when we chased these colonialists and we took charge, eventually a group of local imperialists, the local colonialists developed a group of people who think national resources are their personal resources and they are at their liberty to be utilized in any way they want. We are beginning to see that majority of African elite, Africans who are in charge of national resources, tend to abuse them, tend to use them haphazardly, tend to divert them for personal aggrandizement, personal wealth and enrichment, instead of using these natural resources for the good of the citizens of their country. Now, this is causing a lot of problems, like civil wars we see in South Sudan, the civil war we are seeing in mainly Sudan, and the civil war we are seeing in other countries, like in the military coups in West Africa, the missile coups in West Africa, the trouble we are seeing in Chad and many other African countries. In fact, my brother from Lesotho was complaining about this corruption. Corruption has become a very serious threat to national stability, to national security, and therefore we must begin to deal with the issue of corruption in African countries as freedom giants. Otherwise, we will be imprisoned again. We will be in another captivity. The freedom we are talking about will never be realized if we cannot free national resources to do what they are supposed to do for the people. Services, to build infrastructure, to guarantee security of a country and sovereignty. Otherwise, we are beginning to have local imperialists that are undermining the national security, that are undermining the national sovereignty, that are actually distorting our economy. Now, you can find the corrupt people in the different countries in Africa, they don't invest in their own country. Where do they invest? They invest in safe haven in Europe. They invest outside their mother country. What does that mean? If billions of shillings or billions of the local currency you have leave the economy to go out because of corruption, for that money to come back in the economy is a tug of war. So we now have our economy being distorted by corruption. Therefore, corruption must become a major issue we should talk about, we must scale down in this global anatomy in an attempt of transforming the global anatomy. So the transformation should be revolutionary, complete, so that we deal with this corruption that has become a threat to national security, a threat to national economy, distorting it properly, and a threat to national sovereignty that we have in our country. So this issue of corruption is a very, very serious issue. Like in my country, we are dealing with the issues where foreign minister, and senior government officials diverted, just can you imagine, iron sheath meant to support vulnerable people in Karamoja. Karamoja is the poorest of the poor region you can talk about in Uganda. People there are still living in the primitive era. How can cabinet minister, over 20 over there, be the one responsible to divert, to take away resources meant to support the poor? That kind of corruption is very dangerous. And if we don't solve them, I anticipate many civil wars that will erupt in Africa, and with the reason being corruption by political leaders, political elite, corruption being by the civil servant. Because people will not just be seated. People will rise up and do something. So in the attempt to transform global anatomy, we must therefore begin to deal with the issue of industrial scale corruption that is found everywhere in Africa. In fact, all African countries are suffering from the same problem of industrial scale corruption. So having said that, I want to end this lecture today by looking at the issue about societal norms. Now, you can see in Ghana, there's an ongoing law-making process, anti-homosexuality bill that is being discussed in Ghana. In Uganda, here it was passed, and it is being referred back to Parliament for improvement. You can see African countries are being threatened not to make anti-homosexuality laws. This cannot happen to wealthy countries like Qatar in the Middle East, like Saudi Arabia. Why are these countries being threatened? Because they are economically not independent. They're economically dependent countries. Their health sector, their economies are being powered, are being facilitated, are being funded by this country. So our societal norms are under threat again because of cultural imperialism. And we are beginning to see. But before we will begin to put our feet to become firm on the ground to resist that kind of thing, the first step we have to do is to organize ourselves, to make sure our people are not corrupt, to make sure we have locally generated funds like the Social Security Fund that can be able to fund our economies, so that we will not even need anybody to threaten us about it, not giving us money. And it becomes the reason as to which we then impose on ourselves something we don't want. So therefore, freedom legend, freedom giants, wherever you are, I want to tell you that it is very, very important to protect societal values, because it is the values that keep us as a human, as a group, that identify us, that creates unique identity to ourselves. For us to be able to do that, we must scale down the issue of corruption. We must ensure our economies grow. We must ensure that we have locally generated pool of money like Social Security Fund that we can use to fund our economy instead of depending on borrowed money from a World Bank, from IMF, from Import-Export Bank of China, and what have you. So having said this, I want to once again appreciate all the freedom legends, all the freedom giants, and I want to appreciate deeply the leadership of African Voices International for this great work of giving us opportunity to lecture our people, to lecture them concerning various issues relating to transformation of the global anatomy. I am very proud of you. May God bless you. May God bless Africa. May God bless African Voices International. Thank you very much. I want to remind all the freedom legends and freedom giants that we must be relentless in doing everything possible to transform our different anatomy and to a greater extent to transform the global anatomy. We must think deeply, critically, brainstorm our ideas, do everything within our power, make sure that we transform the global anatomy. It is very possible for us to change and live or create a better world for us, and a world that will be good for all of us. May God bless you.